From the TBD studios, let's talk live with your hosts, Natasha Barrett and Melanie Hastings.
The atrocities in the African region of Darfur have been making headlines for years, but few people have had the courage to take on these devastating realities. In the recently released book, When the Stars Fall to Earth, The Violence Against Women is spotlighted by human rights activist and former reporter Rebecca Tinsley. Rebecca joins me now, and this is so interesting. First of all, I want to get to just how you happened upon going to Africa and really learning about what is going on there. How did it begin? I mean, it was years ago when you visited a refugee camp in Sudan, was it?
That's right. In 2004, at the height of the killing, I went to the refugee camps in Darfur because I knew that a genocide was happening. And to remind your viewers, we're talking about an extreme Arab regime killing its own citizens who happen to be black African because of racism.
So before you even went over there and saw what you saw, did you think for a second, wait a second, my safety, going over there with what's happening?
This isn't about me. This is about, women being systematically raped. This is about children being thrown onto fires simply because the government that should be caring for them is ethnically cleansing them and killing them by the thousands.
It's so hard to hear, but yet at the same time, you said 2004 was your first visit to Sudan. It's now 2011, 7 years. We rarely saw these images or read about them in American newspapers or saw them on American television. Why?
That's deliberate, because the government of Sudan, because it is doing these atrocious things, and has been incidentally since the slave trade. These are the people, the same people who sold black Africans to Western slave traders. This has been going on for a very long time, but they're not stupid, and they know that you keep the media out. And in a media vacuum, you can do anything you want. And the rest of the world will not come.
Did they know your background, being a former reporter?
I lied to get in.
What did you say?
I pretended I was a tourist, and astonishingly, they let me in.
Really?
They wouldn't do that now.
Oh, no, now it's out there. Obviously, your work, the charities that we'll get to in a second. So you get there, you lied to get in saying you're a tourist. How long were you over there, and what did you first see? What was your first outlook on what was going on there on the ground?
I spent my time when I was in Darfur interviewing women survivors, people who had been systematically raped, people whose children had been killed. And they said to me, Rebecca, you have to go back to wherever you're from. They had no idea, of course. And you have to tell our story because nobody else is going to tell our story. And I said to them, but I am a privileged white woman. I come from a country where we have the ultimate luxury. You can turn on a tap and get clean water.
Clean water.
And for most of the world, that is beyond their wildest dreams. And I said, I was born white and healthy and North American, and it doesn't get any luckier than that. And they said to me, yes, but Rebecca, you're here. Tell our story. And that's what I've attempted to do. But the other reason for writing this was because I'm so fed up of the image of Africans we're given as pathetic, helpless people, when in my experience working in 12 different African countries, the opposite is true. These are resilient, resourceful, courageous people. And I think that people in our society will be inspired by reading their stories of how they get up every morning and keep on.
And deal with it. Because they have to. That's their only way. Did you ever get a reception that wasn't warm because you were a Westerner?
Oh no, in Darfur, any time you're among black Africans in Africa, believe me, the reception is incredibly warm. They were so glad I was there. They wanted me to tell their story. But I think they also, and what I've tried to do here, I've tried to write it as a novel because I want to humanize these people. I don't want you to think about how different they are from us. I want people to realize that these people are ordinary people. Terrible things have happened to them. They have risen to that challenge. Most of them didn't know they had the capacity to deal with this, just as people in our own society. They might identify with this. We're all facing challenges.
When you originally went over there, did you have the book in mind? Is that what you were going to do? I'm going to go over there and I'm going to write what's happening.
No, I went there as a journalist, and since then I've written dozens of articles, and I've given hundreds of speeches, and I'm always preaching to the choir. The reason that I wrote a novel was that I want to try and reach a wider audience of people who may identify with the human story here. And the other thing I wanted to stress is that for every act of barbarity in this world, there is a corresponding beautiful act of decency and courage.
It must have been difficult for you as a reporter. You know, as a reporter, you learn to keep your emotions as separate as possible, you know, to be able to tell the story. You know, you've heard it before, to be fair at times, to keep yourself at length, to have clarity. That must have been difficult. Did you find yourself in a situation where that wasn't happening?
I don't have any problem with telling their story in a circumstance where this is genocide. You know, there isn't another side to this story. It is genocide. And whenever this happens in the world, it is our moral responsibility to expose this. Otherwise, we don't deserve to call ourselves human.
You've been very involved in charities since your visits over there. And one interesting charity is the Network for Africa, which really is kind of groundbreaking when you think about the work you're doing. Describe what Network for Africa is.
Okay, well, first of all, I should add that when people buy my book, When the Stars Fall to Earth, all my share of the profits goes to networkforafrica.org, and it goes to our charities. What I thought was, you know, it wasn't enough to just go to Sudan and be like a voyeur, seeing these people suffering. I felt I had to respond by doing something practical. And so we set up Network for Africa to help survivors of genocide in Africa, widows and orphans, to rebuild their lives. And here's the thing, the people that I've met in places like Rwanda and northern Uganda, they actually define themselves as survivors rather than victims. And how can you not want to help someone who takes that incredibly positive attitude to their life?
Before we go, I want to talk about your connection to President Carter and his wife. They kind of handpicked you and said, we need your help. Help us with this.
We were very flattered. My husband and I got an invitation to go to dinner with them, and we thought it would be us and 200 other people.
We just get a phone call, or someone calls and says, Rebecca?
Yeah, we get a phone call, and you know, there are not that many people around who care about human rights, and we turn up thinking that it's going to be some mass event, and it's us and one other couple, and I'm sitting right by Mrs. Carter, and she said, you know what, we need somebody to set up the Carter Center Europe, and that's what we did. And since then, I've been on election monitoring trips with them in Africa. And I have to tell you that for people in their 80s, they are exhausting.
You have to keep up with them, right? Rebecca Tinsley, thanks for being here. The name of the book again, When the Stars Fall to Earth. Thank you. Up next on the show, we'll have more Let's Talk Live, and we're going to get to more Oprah, so stay with us.
Dave Lucas weekdays on News Channel 8.